Hey guys, welcome back to Just Fixing Garage. I'm Justin. We've got Kevin, Matt's on the camera. We're working on a 2008 Honda Fit that's giving us a P2647 in relation to the variable valve timing solenoid being stuck. We're going to end up replacing the entire unit and doing an oil change. If you follow along, I'll show you the code in the car, and then we'll go through, drain the oil, and then work on getting the timing of the valve assembly swapped out. So let's just get into it. Alright guys, so as I was mentioning, we are working on a P2647 code today. Hopefully you can kind of see that. Maybe if I come off of it you can see it better. It's hard to tell, but it says a rocker arm actuator system stuck on bank 1. There's a couple things this could be. It could just be the sensor mounted to the variable valve timing assembly, or it could be broken wire. It can be dirty oil. Things out the oil has been changed pretty regularly on this. I mean, it was changed, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I don't think it had anything to do with oil. And then I look at this, looking at the solenoid up there, or the actuator assembly, it looks pretty rusty, so it wouldn't surprise me if it started to get stuck. And something to mention, this car has 220,000 miles on it. So it wouldn't be, it's not surprising this part goes bad. And another reason I decided to change the whole assembly is because of price. For just the sensor that attaches to the assembly, it's like $65 at AutoZone. Or I can buy the entire assembly from Dorman for like $95 or $100. I'll put the link in the description. But let me show you how to change that out. It should take, I'd say, under an hour, and you're only going to need a few tools to do it. So take your time and follow along, and we'll get it done. All right, guys. So before I go up there and change out that entire, variable valve timing, assembly, valves, and such, I mentioned earlier I'm going to drain the oil out of it because we're doing an oil change anyway. I don't know if when I take this part out, oil would come out, so I figured I'd just do this first. So I'm gonna get my car up in the air like I already did, get a 13 millimeter, and take that oil plug out. Who knows how long this has been changed. Let's see. Make sure we're good to go. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna let this drain out. I'll put the plug back in after it's clean. I may have a new gasket for it as well. I think I do have some. So if you have a new gasket for your plug, great. But otherwise, I'll let this drain. Once it's done enough, I'll go do my filter over here. And then I'll put everything back in, then we'll go up top. Hopefully you can hear me over the heater. One thing you want to make sure when you take the filter off is you look to make sure the old gasket came off. So if you look at your filter, you'll see there's this black rubber ring. Be sure that didn't stay on to the engine or the oil filter housing, because if you screw in a new one and that old gasket's there, it's either going to blow out right away and you're going to lose all your oil and possibly damage the engine, or you'll think it's okay and drive down the road a few miles and it happened going down the road. So just check that. And then when you put your new one in, you're going to want to put some oil on the O-ring. You can use the old oil, it doesn't really matter. You're just doing this so that it isn't a dry seal. Alright. Then we'll spin that on there.
I grew up in a place where they told you what to chase, told you how to run the race. Every move was on the page, but I didn't like their way. Had to fight and misbehave. Had to find a way to change, had to leave to find my way. Got up.
Alright guys, so showed you the code and everything. I went under and drained the oil. I haven't put oil back in yet, again, because I just haven't done that part yet, and I wasn't sure if oil was going to come out with this. I don't think it will, but regardless, we're changing the variable valve timing valve. The whole entire assembly, it comes with a new sensor. I went and got Dorman part 918172 on Amazon. It was a lot more on at AutoZone, even with my commercial account. There was like a $40 difference between Amazon and the AutoZone account. So I went and got it at the cheapest spot, and I went with a name brand. You can get generic no names for like 40 bucks. But I don't know, when you're dealing with something like this, I wanted to go with something that actually has some type of reputation, even though Dorman is crap in a way. So I believe the first step is going to be getting some of this intake out of my way, as well as maybe pulling this plastic cover just to get more access. The part we're going to be changing isn't far. It is right here. You can see it in between here. So if I take these bolts out to get the intake, as well as this part, I should be able to take a few, maybe 10mm bolts out and get it done. So step one for me, I'm just going to pop this out of here. See if that'll just get out of the way. Oh, am I missing a clip? Or is it just being hard? I mean, I don't see any more clips. Oh, there we go. All right. Let's get this out of the way. Looks like the air filter's not bad. All right, so next I'm going to go through and start taking off these bolts. Let me see what size they are.
Caught up in a daydream, I beat my mind up there almost daily. It's how I pass time, no opinions safely. It's how I understand what I want in this place, see. Cause everybody wanna tell you bad things, what could go wrong, what fame brings. But success is a finicky thing, and if you ain't sure, no, it'll never be. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down.
All right, so yeah, let me grab the camera. I'll do a quick close-up. All right, guys, so I've got the air intake out of my way, and I took this cover off. You'll have two 10mm bolts on top of that. And then you have to turn these with a flat head sideways to get them out. I took my pliers and undid the hose that was going into here. You have two bolts that hold this down. You got one here and one here. And then on the back of this part, excuse me, you'll need to unplug this. And then for the clamp that goes onto the throttle body, that was you can use a Phillips head, but it seemed like it was going to strip out, so I used a 5.5mm to get that out. And then I just wiggled this piece out of the way. So now I can get that out of here. And I can more clearly see our part down here that we're going to be changing out, which looks like it's going to be maybe just 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3 right there, that we should be able to easily get into now and pull that part out. Is that a 10? Yeah. So 3 10s, 2 plugs. And I'll work through and get that done.
I will run away, I don't have to plan it. I can go, change my fate, you won't understand it. All alone, that's okay, people I can't stand them. They don't want me to change, keep me where I'm standing. And I don't wanna be where I am. And I want something more, take a chance. It could be possibly my last dance.
All right, guys, I got the variable valve timing valve out. I'm just comparing it to the new one. What I like about the new part is that it already has this sensor installed. You may be able to get away with just replacing this sensor according to what I could see online, but locally this sensor was going to cost me 65 bucks. And for like 20 bucks more, I got the entire assembly in case something is wrong inside of the valve. I don't want to go in there twice. So to me, it just made sense to replace the entire thing and know we're good to go and do a fresh oil change. So again, pulling it out was just the 3 bolts. I did have a little bit of difficulty getting a ratchet in all spots, so a ratchet wrench definitely will help. And if you get them all out, you can turn like the bottom right one, which is here. That one, the bolt we didn't want to slide out because it was hitting the wire, but if you get it loose enough, you can pull the assembly up and then angle it to get the bolt out of it so you don't lose it. And I've got all 3 of mine up there. So now I'm gonna take a look at this gasket, make sure it's good. I might wet it just a little bit. I don't think I need to though for that. And we'll get this reinstalled. You know, don't forget to pull your plugs off, make sure they're good. And then I'm gonna clean that surface area a little bit just to make sure there's no gunk on it. It looks okay, it doesn't look too bad. Then we'll get this new part on and throw everything back together. So follow along, I'll get it bolted in. I'll have to look up torque specs. I'm gonna probably go by feel, but don't go tight. You know, you're dealing with a lot of aluminum. These weren't that hard to break loose, so keep that in mind. How tight they were when they were, how tight they were when you started. You're only about the same tightness, so just don't overdo it.
My last dance, my last dance. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down.
right, guys, so I've got the new variable valve timing valve assembly part in here. It's all plugged in. Again, it's 3 10mm bolts that are holding it all in. I got them pretty snug, but you don't have to go, you know, they kind of like that bottom out and they get tight and snug. That's how I liked it. That's fine. I had to use a 10mm ratchet wrench on the bottom right one still. But all in all, that went fine. I've got it all plugged in. You may be able to do all this without taking the intake out, but honestly, it was easier, you know, made it so I could get in here. You know, do as you please, it's up to you, but this worked good for me. Now I've just got to put my intake back on, which is going to be, you know, wobbling it back onto here, getting this hose hooked back up, attaching this rubber boot back to it, and then this bolt was like sheared off and isn't holding it, but this bolt was still working for the intake, so I'll put that back in and set it back on there. But all in all, there's not too much to the intake. I'll have to clamp it down when it's back on, so I'm going to do that. And then we'll recap at the end to talk about everything, and then I'll have to fill it up with oil and we'll work from there. So hopefully, guys, you can follow along. Very easy to get to. If you want, you are able to change just this sensor, but if you're going to spend 65 bucks to AutoZone, you might as well spend like 90 and just get the entire thing and know that everything here is good, because just because the sensor is giving you a code doesn't mean that there isn't actually something wrong with the assembly. So to me, this made more sense, and if, you know, this thing is getting pretty rusty and old, it wouldn't surprise me if this, you know, it was seizing up in here, which would be this part. So again, I think it's easier to chuck the whole thing at it and know it's good to go. This gasket's pretty flat, which maybe it would have started leaking in the near future too. So let's get the intake back on and put some oil in it. All right, so hopefully you can hear me, but I took that rubber piece off and stuck it back on here so that it tucked in. You're fine, Matt, don't turn it off, don't turn the heat off. Because apparently it's supposed to come off with it, so that's all good to go. I'm gonna start putting everything back in now.
Possibly my last dance, my last dance. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down.
Alright guys, so everything is back together. Again, I showed you, I took that little rubber boot off and stuck it on the inside and lined it up with all the notches to get that on. I've got to plug this back in before I forget. So I put that on, clamp this back tight with a 5.5mm socket. I've got my wire plugged back in there. I've got my hose plugged back in. I put my air filter in, put all the clamps back on all four. I put my little booty back on this and put my 10mm bolt back in there. Again, ours is broken here. That one was completely locked in, but this is still nice and solid, so I'm not too worried about that. And then all these plugs are done as well. I put our cover back on, and I used, you know, put the two 10mm in, and then for these, you just turn these sideways, use a flathead or your fingernail if you got enough. And that's all good to go. So now I need to put oil in it because I did drain the oil. I think this thing costs for somewhere around 4 quarts. I'll look it up real quick, but I had already bought everything we need. And then I'll clear the code and hopefully it'll be good to go.